All right, today, AP Worlders, we're going to study the interwar years, or what is known as the interwar years, which is the years in between World War I and World War II. We're going to start with the Treaty of Versailles, which was the ending of World War I. And at the Treaty of Versailles, there were four members that came. There was the British Prime Minister, David Lloyd George. There was the French Prime Minister, George Clemenceau. There was Italian Prime Minister, Vittorio Orlando, and then America's President, Woodrow Wilson. Russia and Germany were not there, even though they were, obviously big parts to World War I. They were not invited to the peace treaty talks. So, as you can probably guess, it's not going to be a very fair peace treaty. All right, Russia's going to be upset because even though they fought in the war and were on the winning side, even though they left early, the war, they weren't given anything for winning the war, all right, which cost them a lot. And then Germany is obviously not going to be fair to them because they were not there, all right. And so this treaty was very uneven. And Germany at the end had to accept war guilt, which is, saying that they caused World War I to happen. They were going to have to pay reparations, and they're going to lose a lot of their land. So that's going to cause a lot of resentment in Germany, right, which would be one of the reasons for World War II is this unfairness from this treaty. Japan is also going to be left out. If you remember, Japan joined World War I late, hoping to gain some of the territory that Germany had in the Pacific. All right, they weren't going to be invited to the peace treaty. They're not going to gain that land, which is going to make them upset after the peace treaty, right? Which would be why Japan would be on the other side during World War II. And then also, United Nations was created. All right, Woodrow Wilson had that plan. They did create a League of Nations, however, the United States stayed out of it, and the League of Nations wasn't going to be sufficient enough to stop World War II. Here's a quick map that you can see Europe after World War I. All right, here are a bunch of new nations that are going to be created from land that Germany and Austria-Hungary once occupied. This land right here is called the Rhine, R-H-I-N-E, Rhineland. And this area was land that Germany is going to lose during World War I, and they're not supposed to be occupied. All right, and also this land over here, Poland. This area was mostly Austria-Hungary, right? With the new countries, Yugoslavia, Czechoslovakia, Austria-Hungary were split up. All right, so all this was due changes after World War I. All right, as mentioned before, World War I is going to lead to movements, or to the movements in the process of decolonization around the world. And they all are going to have some similar key themes. All right, first they're going to be led by Western educated elites. They're all going to have charismatic leaders. They're going to be nonviolent protests. And basically they're going to be started because of promises that were taken back by the Europeans. If you remember from the last lecture, that during the war, while Europe was preoccupied, they gave a lot of the colonies their own control. And once the war was over, they took that control back, which led to resentment, but also just fighting in the war along them. It cast doubts on the European racial supremacy to the people of Asia and to Africa. All right, the first place we'll look at is India, right? As you remember, they're controlled by British. And one thing that you might not have realized was Gandhi wasn't the first leader of independence in India. All right, there was a leader. His name is spelled Tilak, Tilak. He was the first leader of independence in India. All right, but then Gandhi would be the one to take it over and to push it even further to promote this independence in India. But Britain said after the war, or during the war, they promised if India helped that they would give them independence. But once the war was over, Britain said no. They said there's a price to pay. They said that we did a lot to help you guys. We built railroads, we built telegraph lines, help with your education. So they were saying that you can't just become free. And so they kind of went back on their promise after the war, which led to, all those protests and things like that in India that they organized. One other thing to note is the Amritsar massacre. Amritsar. It's spelled Amristar. All right, and it was a peaceful protest in Amritsar, India. However, the British began to fire. Good morning, Todd. All right, the British began to fire on the unarmed crowd, and at the end, there was almost 400 people dead and over 1,000 wounded. All right, and this massacre would lead to a lot of the protests and getting the British out. All right, you might remember Gandhi's Salt March, where they marched to the sea instead of getting salt from the British, which they were taxing. Right, they marched to the sea to get their own salt. All right. Next, we have Egypt, which is here. All right, so remember they were independent, but once they built the Suez Canal, that they were heavily influenced by the British and the French, right? Because they wanted to have the Suez Canal to create that shortcut to India. All right, and so Egypt wanted to get that British influence out. They were kind of ruled like puppet rulers by the British. All right, and so once again, these were Western educated leaders who started this in Egypt. All right, one incident of note is the Dinshawi incident. It's spelled Dinshawaii. All right, and this incident was when British troops were shooting, supposedly, at least they said, at pigeons. And accidentally, they shot a woman while shooting at these pigeons. Once the woman was shot and killed, an angry mob attacks the British soldiers. One British soldier ended up dying, and what happened was the British decided to punish the Egyptians instead of the British soldiers who were shooting at the pigeons, and they actually hung. I'm not sure if it's hung or hang, but whatever. You know what I mean. They hung 5 Egyptians. All right, and so this outraged the Egyptian people, and began to protest. Eventually, in 1922, the British agreed to start to withdraw their people, and by 1936, they were completely withdrawn from Egypt. But after they left, there was a huge economic disparity. 70% of the land in Egypt was owned by only 6% of the people. So it's going to cause more future problems in Egypt. Next is the Ottomans, all right, which was, around here they had the Balkans, they had what's Turkey, Syria, Israel, right? They had all this land, the Ottomans, and they sided with Germany during World War I. So after the war, as you can see, the winning side decided to divide that land up, all right? And French and Britain would occupy a lot of that land, which really angered the Arab people in that area. But new countries like Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, Palestine, all right? So Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, which is here, Palestine, which now is Israel, but those places were created. And one thing of note to know for this region is the Balfour Declaration. All right, so it's just spelled Balfour, right? Balfour Declaration, and that was a declaration which went with Zionism, all right, which is one of your vocab words, Zionism, and that was the idea that there should be a homeland for the Jewish people, and that idea is what's going to lead to the creation of Israel as a country. All right, they're going to take that land, which was Palestine, turn it into Israel as a country or a homeland for the Jewish people, which is why there's so much fighting there today due to that conflict between the Jewish and the Muslims in that region. But as I told you guys in class, we're going to have a Model UN conference on that, so we'll talk more about that in class. All right, the next area for decolonization we're going to talk about is Africa. All right, and they started what was called the Negritude Movement. All right, spelled Negritude. All right, and that was this African pride, all right, to try to end the psychological bondage of colonialism, all right, to end the thought that the Europeans were inferior or were superior, to the Africans, all right, or that the Africans were inferior. And so Africa is going to go through this economic decline due to the overproduction from war being over. And then once again, the Europeans are going to make promises to them that they're not going to keep. And it's going to lead to this wanting to break away. All right, then the last area is Vietnam, which is located here. They came to the meeting as well. The leader Ho Chi Minh, H-O-C-H-I-M-I-N-H, Ho Chi Minh. He's going to come out to the conference. He's going to try to get into the Treaty of Versailles, and they're going to keep him out. And they say he's not allowed in there, and that's going to anger him. He's going to return to Vietnam, and he's going to start the Communist Party, which will eventually lead to the Vietnam War. Now in Europe, post-World War I Europe, is going to be divided into 3 periods. The first is going to be 5 years of painful recovery. All right, economic recovery. The land's going to be destroyed because of the trench warfare, things like that. So it's going to be a painful recovery for Europe. The next 6 years are going to be an era of peace and progress, all right, kind of known as the Roaring Twenties. And then the last is going to be an era of transformation in Europe, where they're going to have, new leaders, totalitarian leaders that are going to come about. All right, so these eras of growing and peace and progress, the second one, all right, there are going to be a lot of social changes. Class distinctions are going to start to fade away. There's going to be an expansion of white-collar jobs, right, creating more middle-class people. There's going to be new advances in technology, and women are going to earn the right to vote, all right? And women are also going to change their style, right? They're going to start to wear their hair short, all right, cut their hair, also wearing skirts above their knees, all right? So it's going to be a lot of social changes during these Roaring Twenties. All right, then we're also going to get the scientific revolution, or second scientific revolution. You get Albert Einstein challenging the traditional ideas of the universe. All right, you get Freud and a lot of advancements in psychology work. All right, but the problem is going to come because it's going to eventually lead to the Great Depression, these Roaring Twenties. All right, one of the things that people are going to do during these Roaring Twenties too is buy a lot of things on credit. All right, and not realizing that buying things on credit can have a downfall. All right. Now, one of the things of the Great Depression, right, we have the Dawes Plan here, and that was the United States plan to try to help Germany's economy, try to help them rebuild as they were going into this depression, right? They were forced to pay these reparation payments, and what it did was it really hurt the German economy trying to pay these war reparations back for the war. So the United States decided to give high-interest loans to Germany. Germany would pay those war reparations to the Allies, and then the Allies who borrowed money from the United States during World War I would pay the United States back. All right. However, as you can see, it's really just the United States paying themselves, right? So it's not really going to improve things that much. And you can see German money wasn't worth basically anything, all right, because of these reparations and the Great Depression, right? People would burn the money to warm themselves, all right, or kids playing with them as toys because they really weren't worth anything. So the Great Depression hits. Some of the causes would be this agricultural depression, all right? So farmers were producing a lot of farm goods for the war. Once the war was over, they still had this overproduction. So overproduction of farm goods leads to lower prices, which hurt the farmers because now lower prices, they can't pay back their crops or pay for their farms, or they bought farm equipment on credit and they couldn't pay it back. Also the bank failures, all right? So people put their money in the banks weren't insured, so people lost their money. You also have the stock market crash, all right? And then also you have people buying things on credit, as I said before. And all that led to the Great Depression. And there were big effects of the Great Depression, like world trade went down, massive unemployment, industry decline, and poverty and hunger. And because of this Great Depression, totalitarian leaders are going to be able to rise. Here you have Mussolini from Italy and Hitler from Germany, and they rise because of these bad situations. And some characteristics of totalitarian leaders is they attack democracy and capitalism. They're a strict, directed economy. The state's more important than the individual. They're charismatic. They depend on mobilizing the masses. They embrace public welfare programs. They have strict censorship and propaganda, and women are not permitted in public roles. Ooh, barely finished. Just under 15 minutes. All right. See you guys in class.